to read?
Read.
Okay, maybe you can read.
Okay, should I
What?
read?
Yeah.
This concealed self and consciousness is our real or whole being, of which the outer is a part and a phenomenon, a selective formation for a surface use. We perceive only a small number of the contacts of things which impinge upon us. The inner being perceives all that enters or touches us and our environment. We perceive only a part of the whole working of our life and being. The inner being perceives so much that we might almost suppose that nothing escapes its view. We remember only a small selection from our perception, and of these, even we keep a great part in a storeroom where we cannot always lay our hand upon what we need. Inner being retains everything that it has ever received and has it always ready to hand. We can form into coordinated understanding and knowledge only so much of our perceptions and memories as our trained intelligence and mental capacity can grasp in their sense and appreciate in their relations. The intelligence of the inner being needs no training, but preserves the accurate form and relations of all its perceptions and memories, and though this is a proportion which may be considered doubtful or difficult to concede in its fullness, can grasp immediately when it does not possess already their significance. And its perceptions are not confined, as are ordinarily those of the waking mind, to the scanty gleanings of the physical senses, but extend far beyond and use, as telepathic phenomena of many kinds bear witness, a subtle sense the limits of which are too wide to be easily fixed. The relations between the surface will or impression and the subliminal urge, mistakenly described as unconscious or subconscious, have not been properly studied except in regard to unusual and unorganized manifestations and to certain morbidly abnormal phenomena of the diseased human mind. But if we pursue our observation far enough, we shall find that the cognition and will or impulsive force of the inner being really stand behind the whole conscious becoming. The latter represents only that part of its secret endeavor and achievement which rises successfully to the surface of our life. To know our inner being is the first step towards a real self-knowledge.
Okay, so this is an interesting para. We'll have a look at what he's saying. Some of it is a repetition, but still, we'll have a look. So remember, the chapter is the boundaries of the ignorance. Now, normally when we speak of ignorance, we mean the human being is ignorant. Okay, we don't even speak of the animal being as ignorant because that is very obvious. Okay, he can't do so many things that we can do. But man prides himself that his intelligence is the last capacity that he has, and he can do everything with it. But that's absolutely wrong. So now Sridhar is saying we will examine the boundaries of the ignorance, not only individually, but in its larger method. He has used that in the first sentence itself. The larger view we will take. In other words, we will not restrict ignorance only to the human consciousness, but to all in the universe. Wherever the consciousness is there is a limit. And so the animal is also part of the universe and it's also limited, therefore is in ignorance. And if you go out into the universe, in the physical world, the trees also are ignorant. So he's saying we will examine the boundaries of the ignorance in the whole, in the entire system of existence. Okay. Now he is looking at everything one by one. Now, where does the ignorance end? Outside, if I go science, I can know many things, but still I'm in ignorance. Even if I go into myself, which is today's para, there also we can know 10 times more than what we know in our superficial being, but there also there is a sort of ignorance, limited ignorance is there. Down if you go, obviously, there is ignorance because you are going darker and darker into darker regions. So where is this ignorance going to end? He will tell you only in the vertically above. There, that also at a very high level, there ignorance ends. And if you define ignorance by seeing the multiplicity, okay, seeing the many and thinking they are real, that is the ignorance. So he is even over mind consciousness for him is ignorance. Okay, this is just the background I'm giving you. Now we start reading the para that we have to read today. It's a very interesting para, and some words we'll have to look at very carefully. If we undertake this self-discovery, so in the previous para he has told you that when we look into ourselves, we find that we know so little. We don't know our intraconscient, we don't know our superconscient, we don't know our inconscient, we don't even know our circumconscient around us. So now we is continuing the discovery, self-discovery of man. If we undertake this self-discovery and enlarge our knowledge of the subliminal self. So very clearly, he is going to discuss the subliminal self. And what is the subliminal self? The intraconscient. The intraconscient is when you go deep into yourself horizontally, okay? Not above and not below. Horizontally into yourself, not outward. Horizontally, if you go out, you get scientific knowledge into the physical world. But if you go horizontally into yourself, you will get spiritual knowledge. Okay, psychological knowledge you will get. So that's what he discovered, subliminal self. If we undertake this self-discovery and enlarge our knowledge of the subliminal self, so conceiving it as to include in it our lower subconscious and upper subconscious ends. So now he is giving a slightly different meaning to subliminal self. He is using the word subliminal in the sense of inner, above, and below. Okay? He is saying, so conceiving, if you conceive it as to include in it our lower subconscious, okay, subconscious and even inconscious, and upper superconscious ends, we shall discover that it is really this which provides the whole material of our apparent being, and that our perceptions, our memories, our effectuations of will and intelligence are only a selection from its perceptions, memories, activities, and relations of will and intelligence. So, huge sentence.
Oh, Rangada?
Yeah, tell me.
Rangada?
Yeah.
The paragraph I read
Before.
is before the one
Yeah.
before that you
That's
are
right.
reading now.
Okay.
So that one
This
starts in
concealed
page.
self.
Yes. This concealed self and consciousness.
And consciousness.
That's the paragraph I have read, and you were reading the paragraph, the next paragraph.
Rangata, we have to read page 576.
Yes.
Achha, this concealed.
Yes.
Yes, Rangata. Yes,
Okay,
Rangata.
okay. So, no, because I went according to what was put on the chat. Okay, that's right. This concealed. I'm sorry, huh? Okay. So, this concealed self and consciousness. Yeah, this also is a very interesting para. We'll have a look at it. Okay, so let's do one thing. To get the context, I'll just read out the summary of what he said earlier. Okay. It will help to place in properly. So I'm reading out in my words the summary of what he said earlier. Okay. Even an ordinary examination of our surface being shows us how ignorant we are of ourselves and the world. Much of the world is unknown to us. It seems to be inconscient. We understand nothing of matter, plant, and animal. But a more careful psychological inquiry reveals to us the depth and width of our ignorance. Note the depth and width also, okay, of our ignorance. He is not talking of the height. Huh? That's all. Our surface nature is like an iceberg or the jutting spire of a submerged temple. 9/10 of it is submerged below the surface. Hidden to our view, there is much below. Also, okay, of our ignorance. He is not talking of the height. Huh? That's all. Our surface nature is like an iceberg or the jutting spire of a submerged temple. 9/10 of it is submerged below the surface. Hidden to our view, there is much below, within, and above us, totally unknown to us. This is what you said in the previous paragraph. Now, I'll read each sentence that this concealed consciousness. Okay. This concealed self and consciousness. So, he is making a difference between self and consciousness. We discussed this the other day, that there is the psychic being, and Pallavi was asking whether psychic being and consciousness are the same. So there are two views. One is that self is nothing but consciousness. Okay, but it can also be ananda, it can also be power, but it depends at which level. So therefore, he is saying self and consciousness, because consciousness is not only at the self. It can be there in the mind, it can be there in the vital, it can be there even in matter, but high hidden. So when he is talking of the self, it is consciousness which takes the station of the self, just in the higher mind level. That is self. Therefore, he is saying self and consciousness. Okay, consciousness is much higher than the self also. So, but the self is made of consciousness. It's also made of ananda. It's also made of power. Okay, so this concealed self and consciousness is our real or whole being, of which is one above and below. That's what he will tell you. Above, below, around. Okay, is our real or whole being, of which the outer is a part and a phenomenon. The part which is a part, your body, mind, life, is a part, and it's a phenomenon. Phenomenon is something, an event. It is born and it dies. But yourself never is born and never dies. It's part of the divine. So body, mind, life, the outer is a part. Our body is a part of universal matter. Our vital is a part of universal prana. We have discussed that many times. It's a part. And like the wave and the sea. The wave is part of the sea. Okay. And a phenomenon. Phenomenon, exactly that. Event. With a beginning and an end. And a growth in the middle. Okay. That's a phenomenon. Any event can be called a phenomenon. But all events start, develop, and end also. So everything in the physical world is of that nature. Okay? The world itself is permanent, but everything in it is a phenomenon. Okay? A selective formation for our surface use. So a selective formation. Okay? Your body is a selective formation of matter. It has been selected. A little bit of matter has been selected and made. The same truth applies to the vital and the mind. Okay? Even the soul, you can say, even the soul is a selective formation of the universal divine soul. You can say that in a very rough manner, because essentially your individual soul is different from everybody. For everybody, the soul is different. But essentially it's the same. So, selective formation for our surface use. Surface use in the physical world. We perceive only a small number of the contacts of things which impinge upon us. So, when I see and smell and hear things in the physical world, it's a very small amount of things coming to me. Those things which I don't see, those things which I don't feel, those things which I don't hear are all there in the universe. But we are ignorant of them. Only the physical things impinge upon our senses. Impinge, come and clash and put themselves and contact our senses. The inner being perceives all that enters and touches us. So the inner being is talking of the intraconscient. Okay. The horizontal, that we just discussed just now. Horizontal within, not horizontal outside. Okay. Horizontal outside is the universe. We know, we are beginning to know something through science, something about it. But much of it still remains unknown. The inner being perceives all that enters all that enters or touches us and our environment. So here again, see, he is very careful. All that enters, it comes into your inner being, or it touches you from outside. Okay, touches us and our environment. So the inner being perceives all that enters or touches us, and our environment also touches us. We perceive only a part of the workings of our life and being. Only part of it. Okay. I don't see what's happening in other people's vitals. I don't see what's happening in the universal prana. I don't see. I'm not aware of it. But the inner being is aware. Okay. The inner being perceives so much that we might almost suppose that nothing escapes its view. Okay. This is when you are in the inner being, everything comes into you. Everything comes in, almost everything. Nothing is rejected. This is a very interesting thing, and it is recorded. In other words, all the events happening in time and space are recorded. They are not evanescent. They don't disappear. They remain in subtle form. This also we have discussed one day, and I was telling you how in Savitri also there is a description of it. Okay, it's like you go into a library exactly in the same way. You go to a library, I want a particular book. I've told this earlier also, but I'm repeating. I want a particular book. I know the title of the book, or I know the name of the author. Then I go and tell the librarian, and he says, okay. So he goes to his index cards. In the library, we have got, I think, 5 or 6 in our library. We have got 5 or 6 cases, cabinets, where all these index cards are kept. So you look in the index cards, you go to the author, find out the card, and on the card will be written the floor number, the room number, the cupboard number, and the shelf number. So precise. Okay. Then you can immediately go and get the book, and it is even replaced. Very often in our library, things are not replaced properly, so they get lost because you can't trace them anymore. But that is what is to be done. So exactly in the same way, any event that you want to know, if you are in the intraconscious, any event, I want to know what happened in the Battle of Plassey, you can access it in your intraconscious. Okay. I want to know what Napoleon did, okay, in St. Helena. I can go into my intraconscious and get that because everything is recorded. This recording is a very interesting thing, how it gets recorded. So I'll just tell you what the theosophists say, how they explain. They explain it in this way. They say, take a dish of water, absolutely calm, quiet, no movement at all. Okay. Now take your finger and dip it in the center, like that. Just dip it like that. What will happen? A wave will be set up, and a wave is a vibration. Now, everything in the physical world is vibration. We have discussed this also earlier. And the combination of these 5 vibrations makes all the forms in the universe. Subtle forms, middle, grossest forms and grosser forms. All are only combination of vibrations. So, if the vibration, that circular vibration that goes on the dish of water, reaches the end of the dish, it will cease. So it won't be recorded anymore. But suppose your dish is infinite, okay, then it will travel, the wave will travel, but there is friction. In the water, there is friction. And after maybe 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers, it will die out. It will subside because there is friction. But in the subtle world, there is no friction. So the wave continues to exist. It never vanishes. This is how the theosophists explain how everything is recorded. Nothing is ever lost. And it's very interesting that when the intraconscious was first discovered in Europe, in America, there was one gentleman called Edgar Casey, and he made many readings from his intraconscious. He also spoke about the discovery of the sacred scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and much after he had forecast that, they were discovered. So in other words, you can go into your intraconscious and know everything about it. So this is what Sadhguru said. We perceive only a small part of our work, of our life and being. The inner being perceives so much that we might almost suppose that nothing escapes its view. We remember only a small selection from our perceptions. Everything that the inner being is seeing is recorded, but we, in our outer mind and outer vital, we remember very little. We remember only a small selection from our perceptions. If you remember, elsewhere also he says that he uses another image. And these images are very interesting because they give you subtle truths. The image that he has used earlier is that I have a huge sum of money in the bank. Okay, but I've lost my passbook and I'm only using small change. I don't know how much money is there. I'm only using small change. So this is the same image of what he's saying here in different words. We have a huge amount of information in our intraconscious, but we use only so little, very, very little. We remember only a small selection from our perceptions, and of these even, we keep a great part in the storeroom. Okay, the storeroom is a universal storeroom where the intraconscious, where everything is there. And mind you, your personal intraconscious is the same as the universal intraconscious. Remember, if you remember the image I gave you about the house, if you go into your house, at the back of the plot, you have it's open sky because you have a kitchen garden. Open sky suggests the universal intraconscious. Okay, so we remember only a small selection from our perceptions. And of these even, we keep a greater part in a storeroom where we cannot always lay our hand upon what we need. But the inner being is different. The inner being retains everything that it has ever received and has always ready to hand. It's always ready to hand. Note the word ever, that it has ever received. In other words, all your past life events also are recorded and you can recover them. Okay, that's how Sri Aurobindo remembered his relation with Dilipda in ancient Greece. And mother remembered how she had some of her experiences in the past lives. She remembered, it's there in the agenda. Right? The inner being retains everything that is ever received and has it always ready to hand. So if you want to know your own past also, go into your intraconscious, you can recover it. We can form into coordinated understanding and knowledge only so much of our perceptions and memories as our trained intelligence and mental capacity can grasp in their sense and appreciate in their relations. Okay? The intelligence of the inner being needs no training. At our level, we need training. We can train our memory, we can train our observation, all these things we can train. But in the inner being, the intraconscious, the inner being, what Sri Aurobindo calls subliminal. But Sri Aurobindo use the word subliminal here in a slightly different sense. Okay. Yeah. Intelligence of the inner being needs no training, but preserves the accurate form and relation of all its perceptions and memories. And then there's a comma dash. Okay, so this is parenthetical. Though this is a proposition which may be considered doubtful or difficult to conceive in its fullness, because it's not very easy always to, even in your intraconscious, to get it. That's why he's making a slight concession. Though this is a proposition which may be considered doubtful. Considered doubtful. The Sridhar is sticking to his point that it can be recovered, or difficult to conceive its fullness. Now, I read the sentence without the parenthetical phrase. Okay? I eliminate the parenthetical phrase. but preserves the accurate form and relations of all its perceptions and memories, and can grasp immediately, when it does not possess already, their significance. So, not only will you remember the event, but you will also understand the significance. Okay, so they were said this, and its perceptions are not confined, as are ordinarily those of the waking mind, to the scanty gleanings of the physical senses. In other words, scanty gleanings is very interesting. The word gleaning is after the harvest, after the rice has been collected on the threshing floor, and you have threshed the rice and separated the straw from the rice, and you have collected all the rice and put into bags. Still on the floor, threshing floor, there will be a few grains lying here and there, and then you collect them. That's a gleanings. So what our knowledge of ourselves and the world is scanty gleanings, not the harvest itself. Okay? So we use images all the time, and very interesting to look into the images. Okay? So our knowledge of ourselves is only scanty gleaning. Not only gleaning, but scanty, very little, okay, of the physical senses, but extend far beyond and use, not only know, but also use as telepathic phenomena of many kinds bear witness. Okay. Telepathy is only one of the proofs, he's saying. Bear witness to prove. Okay. A subtle sense, the limits of which are too wide to be easily fixed. Subtle sense goes very, very wide, deep, up and inside. The relations between the surface will or impulsion and the subliminal urge, they mistakenly described as unconscious or subconscious, have not been properly studied except in regard to unusual and unorganized manifestations and to certain morbidly abnormal phenomena of the diseased human mind. So I'll have a look at what he's saying in this, because we have to understand what he's referring to. The relations between the surface will or impulsion. Okay. In our outer vital, we have will and impulsions. And the subliminal urge. Inside also in the subliminal, there's a will, which is calling an urge. Okay. Mistakenly described as unconscious, subconscious, mistakenly because it's not unconscious at all. It's unconscious to you when you are in the outer consciousness. When you go into your inner consciousness, you see that your consciousness is 10 times more powerful than the outer. Therefore, mistakenly described as unconscious. And who is saying unconscious? The famous psychologist of the West. And what's his name? I'm trying to recover his name.
Freud.
Huh?
Freud.
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 Sigmund Freud. Okay. And Sigmund Freud, that he had discovered the unconscious, he called it, but actually what in similar language is the intraconscious, not the unconscious at all. Okay, that's why I said this saying mistakenly called. Number one. Number two, okay, what he knew, he thought he had not driven, he was to interpret dreams and tell them. But he paid too much attention only to what he called the libido. That means the sex. Okay. But that is only one part of human life. And he gives tremendous importance to sex, which is absolutely unjustified. There are so many other things in the human nature. That's only one thing. But he made the mistake of thinking, first of all, is unconscious. Secondly, that is all depends upon the sex urge. That's not true at all. Okay. That's why I said the saying mistakenly described. Have not been properly studied except in regard to unusual and unorganized manifestations. By the way, unusual and unorganized, we'll discuss what is meant by unorganized, but his knowledge of psychology, Sri Aurobindo says, it is like teaching a young child, C-A-T, cat, is a cat. D-O-G is a dog. That's all. So the preliminary psychological lessons is what Freud has known. So it's very ironical about this, and this is how it escalates. So they know so little about the real, only yogis know more. Okay? That's why nowadays there's a whole branch of, in India, it has started, it's called integral psychology. Not the psychology as in the West, okay? So integral psychology, relating it to yogic practices, okay? Or they also call it yoga psychology, which is totally different from what the Westerners understand by psychology, okay? So the relations that we read, okay, mistakenly described as unconscious of conscious, have not been properly studied except in regard to unusual and unorganized manifestations. So, what is unusual? Suppose you have the capacity to look at something only and bend it, like Uri Geller. That is unusual. Or suppose you can read your mind and know what you are thinking. This mind reading has also become a very big thing in modern times. Okay, mind readers they call them. So that also is unusual. But Srimati is saying it has not been properly studied. Unorganized manifestation, that which suddenly comes up without any obvious reason. But when you examine how these things are there, suppose you examine telepathy. Under what conditions is it coming? Who is experiencing? Is it always possible? This is the real study of something. So then it becomes organized. Okay? So many things are still unorganized. That's what he's saying. But certainly Uri Geller's capacity to bend spoons by looking at them is an unorganized phenomenon, abnormal and unorganized. Okay? And to certain morbidly abnormal phenomena of the diseased human mind. This morbidly abnormal phenomena of the diseased human mind, when someone goes mad, he starts imagining all sorts of things. And Shemla also described this, okay, in the madhouse. Okay, the thoughts that are coming into the madhouse, the mind of a madman is not at all sane. It is not healthy. It is morbid. Certain morbidly abnormal phenomena of the diseased human mind. But if we pursue our observation far enough, we shall find that the cognition and will or impulsive force of the inner being really stand behind the whole conscious becoming. Okay? Whatever you are in your outer nature, okay, it is actually being determined by the intraconscious. Suppose you have a good intelligence. I'm taking only good things. Suppose you are very good at understanding things. It's your inner being that is the real good one, and it is sending you from there. And what comes out into your normal mind is only a small amount of what is there in the intraconscious. That's what Shemla is saying. But suppose you have a tendency for, say, let us say, anger. Okay, that also there is something. The real cause is the intraconscious. Everything that you are is in the intraconscious. That's a root. And what you're seeing in your outer nature, whatever you are, is only reflections of the inner being. That's what Shemla is saying. Okay. Really, so the impulsive force of the inner being really stand behind the whole conscious becoming. The conscious becoming is, Shemla is using very interesting words. Conscious becoming is actually the outer nature, but it's not conscious at all. It's mostly unconscious. The latter represents only that part of secret endeavor and achievement which rises successfully to the surface of our life. So the latter is the conscious becoming. The conscious becoming is part of your body, mind, life. Okay, that's your outer nature. The outer nature is what I mean by the latter. The conscious being is the latter, not the inner being. Represents only that part of its secret endeavor and achievement which rises successfully to the surface of our life. So he has used the word surface, and he has told you earlier also that the temple is submerged and only the spire is seen. So that's a surface. So our body, mind, life is only the surface of our real submerged true self. To know our inner being is the first step towards a real self-knowledge. So, this intraconscient is discussed in great detail in the earlier chapter. That's why now we are discussing the boundaries of the ignorance. Because he told you there that the intraconscient is 10 times more knowledgeable than the outer nature, but still there is a possibility of ignorance. There can be errors, mistakes in your way of looking at things. So when do those mistakes disappear? When you go above and not horizontally into yourself. That's exactly what is slowly building up to. Okay? When you go above, the ignorance starts becoming less and less and less. And finally, at the supramental level, there is no more ignorance. You see the absolute truth. Okay? So, 37. So, we have got only 3 minutes left. So, we can't start the new one. Or maybe we can. How big is it? Let's see.
Can I ask you a question, please?
Yes, please do that.
You know, you said that in the intra-conscient, everything is recorded.
That's
but
right.
now each individual will have his own recording. But for one to know what happens in the Battle of Plassey or during Napoleon's time, then it has to be like a universal intraconscient.
That's exactly what I told you, Yasmin. I told you that the individual intraconscient becomes the universal intraconscient. I told you, I gave you the image of the kitchen garden at the back. Suppose you are, your intraconscient, when you are entering your personal intraconscient, you are entering into the universal intraconscient.
Okay.
Yeah, just like the cosmic consciousness. Your individual consciousness at the higher mind level becomes a cosmic consciousness. It's no more individual. The individual expands and becomes a cosmic. Okay? That's why I gave you the image of the house. Okay, it's very useful. The house is what you are. You have a 60 by 40 plot and you have built a house. And on that house, you have not occupied the whole part. There is a cellar, there is a foundation, there is a first floor, and you have built only a first floor up to now. So this image is very useful. Keep that in mind. You are sitting on the ground floor. Your senses are the windows and doors. And if you open your windows and doors, how much of the outside world will you see? Very little. That's what Swami is saying. With our senses, we see very little of the universe. Then there's a cellar, the subconscious. Okay. That all sorts of things are stored there. Then there's an inconscient, which is the foundation. And you have built your house on that. Now, if you are lucky enough and you are a spiritual person, you can go to level 2, which is your terrace or your first floor. But you can build more floors. And that is yoga. They have not yet been built in you. The potentiality of building your even 7th floor, which is the supermind, is possible for you. But you have to build them. How do you build them? By yoga. Okay? They have to be built. So if you go into now to continue that image, okay, the intraconscient is the kitchen garden at the back because there's no roof there. It's open to the sky. That's what I mean by universal. So when you go into your...
Yes, I understood.
Yeah, but also the circumconscient, all around your plot, the house is not fully, there's a small bit of 1 meter on the left, 1 meter on the right, and maybe 2-3 meters in front, okay? And there's a gate. That's your circumconscient, that's your aura, okay? So that's very useful to remember in that way. Okay, so we'll go to the next para next time.
Merci beaucoup.
Next time means tomorrow. Okay. So,
Thank you, Rangada.
Thank you, Rangada.
if we undertake, we have to read this.